If you're dating after 40 and you keep attracting Mr. Unavailable on repeat, and what you really want is lasting love with Mr. Right, you're in the right place. This is the season 4 kickoff, and we'll dive into why emotional healing matters in finding Mr. Right. Let's get started. Welcome to season 4, episode 1. I'm so excited to be here with you, and I'm going to tell you why. Our whole season 4 is all going to be based on emotional healing to find love. And this has been the biggest thing that moved the needle forward for me and gave me the tools I needed to actually find a healthy love relationship with my husband. And even despite doing all the energy healing, and I'm a Reiki teacher, and I did all of that energetic stuff, and I did this dating strategies and all of the things, I had really avoided doing the emotional healing because it was the scariest, most vulnerable thing to do, to dive into that emotion, into the heart, into past wounds and childhood wounds and all those things. And once I did that and actually started to heal those wounds and feel more like myself and connect to my true self, that is when everything changed for me. And I started to have different experiences. And it pretty much happened right away as soon as I had healed to a certain point that I met my husband. And it was like, wow, look how easy this was. Going on to a dating app and within 10 days finding my husband, the love of my life. And so I want that for you as well. If you feel like you've been going around in circles and having these same experiences on repeat, and you're like, what am I missing? What am I doing wrong? What is wrong with me? Why can't I find love after 40? I invite you to come with me on this journey of season 4 because you're going to absolutely love it. And you might have some really life-changing, transformative moments, some aha moments where you can actually start to realize that you can change things and that you can actually find love, and you're not going to be left out of this love journey. You're going to have your own love journey. With all that said, let's get started and dive into this episode. It's all about why emotional healing really matters for love. And I kind of hinted at that, but we're going to dive in with a client story. I had a client who she kept attracting unavailable love and chasing after the wrong things, until she realized it was tied to her unhealed heartbreak and her childhood wounds of abandonment and trauma. And she would literally feel sick to her stomach and start to get physically ill when she would go on the dating apps. And then she found that she would have the same experiences all the time and go around in a loop, because then she would say, well, look, see, it's not working. Something's wrong. There's no one out there for me. I'm never going to change this habit or find someone new, and nobody's really out there for me anyway. And she was spiraling and going around into that loop until we started to actually unravel those childhood wounds of abandonment, her old heartbreak from her divorce and things like that. And then she found that when she would go on the dating apps, she would be a lot more excited. She would be more clear, more open, and more able to discern and see like, oh, this person is not really going to be available. And this seems like it's going to be exactly what I've always had. And so she would avoid those situations and move towards what she actually wanted, and her patterns started to change. And that's why it is so important to look at this healing, this emotional healing, when you want to find love. And the other thing I want to point out is knowledge and action alone aren't enough without the healing. So you need to do all 3 of those in a balanced way. And that's what I teach with my clients and my framework and a lot of my courses. It's looking at all 3, but you can't leave out any of the 3. You want to have knowledge, you want to have wisdom of what your patterns are, you want to have that awareness, and you want to bring loving acceptance to it and also take the action. So be on the dating apps, go to singles events. If you're not doing those things, you're really going to have a very difficult time finding someone. And when you heal the wound, and limiting beliefs that are behind that. For example, if you feel like men aren't to be trusted, when you start to actually heal that wound, you're not going to see, and your subconscious isn't going to seek out that experience to continue in that loop and actually bring you back into that experience again. Once you've healed that wound or the wounds that are connected to that, it will lift a veil and reveal the men that you can actually trust. And you'll start to message those ones and say, I notice a difference. I can see now how I've continued this pattern or I've gone after the same things. And it gives you that perspective to be able to say, now I can actually choose differently and stop seeking out those same experiences. Your subconscious is not continually pointed towards that pattern and trying to prove your belief and continue you on that spiral. But the other thing about healing your trauma and move the needle forward for you to find love is one of my experiences where, as I said in the beginning of the episode, I was like, okay, I'm doing all these things, energy healing, I'm doing the dating strategies and everything. How come I'm still kind of spiraling? And I had a friend at the time who was also a healer, and he said to me, it's because you haven't healed your trauma. You think you've healed your trauma, but you haven't actually healed your trauma. If you've heard the words or the phrase spiritual bypassing, it was like I was doing a lot of those energetic healing things, but I wasn't healing the wounds in my heart and the things that made me feel heartbroken. I wasn't actually touching those because I was skirting around it because I didn't want to touch those emotional wounds. It's painful, and I'm not saying that this is easy. But if you want to have a framework, this might be the missing piece. And that's why I'm focusing and doing a whole season on this because it's so important. The other thing that you might hear people talk a lot about, and there's tons of books on this, I'm not the expert in it, but on attachment styles, you might be able to discern which attachment style you might have, whether it's anxious. So if you have the anxious attachment style, you would tend to seek out someone who's an avoidant kind of person. And this would be the chasing and the person running, and you're constantly chasing and they're constantly running. If you find that resonates with you, where you become very interested in somebody who then pulls away and disappears or ghosts you or doesn't answer your messages and then all of a sudden reappears and you feel like you're constantly having to chase after them, that might be something to dive into and look at healing those anxious attachment wounds, which stem from childhood. And there's a lot of things you can do around that. But I just want to point out that that's another layer to be aware of. If you have that kind of attachment style, you might be more prone to chasing after people. And that's definitely what I was doing. I was constantly looking for that person and chasing after them. The more they would run, the faster I would chase after them. The other style would be ambivalent. So that's where you're kind of in a push-pull. At one moment, you might be chasing someone, and the next minute you might be saying, oh, this is not worth my time. This is ridiculous. And you might shut down and turn away from them. So maybe if they come towards you and show their interest, you might say, well, I'm sorry, I'm not interested anymore, and turn away and reject them before being rejected. It's kind of like a push-pull within yourself and acting that out with somebody else. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of different behaviors depending on the situation or what might be triggering you in that dating scenario. So it could look like you're very interested and you chase after them and they pull away, but then they turn around and say, sorry, I've been unavailable and now I'm open and I'm really ready to try this and I feel like there's a connection with us. And then you say, no, sorry, I'm not interested anymore. That might be that you have the ambivalent attachment style, and it's a multi-layered way of protecting yourself, protecting your heart, and trying not to get caught in that cycle or trying to protect yourself from being hurt. So that's another attachment style. It can come up with things that you might say like, oh, he's not my type, and everyone I come across is not worth talking to. That's an example of pushing away or being ambivalent. Or messaging someone who's making you chase them. That's more on the anxious side of things. Then you might come back and say, but I feel such a strong connection. I better keep trying to get their attention. And you feel that connection inside of you and you're like, I know this is real. I know we're meant to be together. You might be saying things like that. And it's really not a mutual thing. and you keep trying to convince the other person, no, but this is a mutual thing, which you can kind of see the flaws in that strategy. So those are some things you can think about as we go through this season, talking about emotional healing. That's going to be some framework in the background. I want to point out the other reason I'm doing this season on emotional healing is it really gives you a lot of hope. And that's what I find working with clients over the years, that they've had the sense that this is really not in the cards for me, and starting to lose hope that they can find love or that it's ever going to happen for them. When you do the emotional healing, it really rewires your love radar and it gives you that sense of hope. When you bring the awareness, the acceptance, and the connection, those are my three pillars of my framework, to the wound, to the heartbreak, you can release it, or what I call alchemize it, and using the wisdom from that wound. And then you can make better choices in the future and you'll see more opportunities. You'll want to make choices based on what you truly want versus what your wound wants, because it's been trying to get your attention or make you finally see it. The good news is you don't have to be fully healed. Now, if you're listening to this, you might be a recovering perfectionist, as I am, and you feel like, oh, I've got to heal, 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 and just keep healing for the rest of my life. I'm never going to be healed enough to have a healthy, lasting love. And that's definitely not true. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be fully healed. We're all a work in progress, and you can go a certain distance of healing until you feel more whole within yourself. You feel more like your true self, and even having a glimpse of that connection and feeling more grounded in what you really desire and who you are as a person. Then you can find someone who you can continue that healing journey with and thriving with them, while also experiencing different levels of healing and evolution with them, and also within yourself. It brings to mind that saying of, you can go fast and go alone, or you can go far and go together. That's how I think of that. It's like, go a certain distance. It might take longer to heal with someone or to be with someone, and on your healing journey, it might take a little longer, but you'll go much further together. Don't think that you have to go the distance by yourself and just keep healing for another 20 years before you feel like you're ready. I don't want you to be doing that. So remember these things as I talk about emotional healing in this season. And there was another saying I want to bring to your attention. If you've been listening to my things are part of my community for a while, you've probably heard me say this, that you don't see things the way they are. You see things the way you are. And that's a quote by Anais Nin. And when you have these wounds and when you have these filters or these things that you're seeing life, or you're seeing someone as a potential partner in front of you, you're seeing them as you are. In other words, you're seeing a lot of your own childhood wounds or entanglement with your parents or your life previously, and then you kind of superimpose it on that person and you see them the way you are, not the way they are and the way things are. The healing really brings a lot more objectivity, and it helps you to see things more in the bigger picture and say, well, maybe that's not true. Maybe they weren't actually appearing in that way. You'll have more of a clear understanding of what they might be looking for, who they are as a person, who they present themselves as, and you'll be able to take a step back and say, is this what I want? Is this the kind of person I want to be with? Or am I going to continue looking because I feel like there's something out there that is more harmonious or more connected to what I desire? And you can ask yourself these questions when you've done this certain amount of healing, because you're not entangled in that vision of the past, or looking at, your divorce or a past heartbreak and being triggered by this new person in front of you who really isn't appearing as you think they are. And I'm not gaslighting you by saying that's not, that person isn't actually doing what they're doing. This is why I taught all about intuition in the last season, because I want you to really be connected to your intuition and to be able to feel and sense what you're feeling and to listen to it. If you are getting a no from your intuition that this person is not right for you, I want you to listen to that. And also, adding in another layer for this season is Is this part of my emotional wound? Or is there something that I need to really look at here that I can do for myself and to create more space and to have more of an experience that I want to have by healing something that is an emotional pattern or a past relationship choice, and also continue to listen to my intuition. And by the way, the more you heal, the more you do your emotional healing, the easier it is to listen to your intuition. That's another reason why I want to do this season, because it is so important for being able to connect to your true feelings and what you're sensing and feeling and what your intuition is telling you. It's a lot easier to connect to that when you've done your emotional healing. That is, in a nutshell, why emotional healing really, really matters for love. And if you feel like there's been sort of a missing piece in your journey looking for love and finding Mr. Right, I think you're really going to love this season. Just an overview of some of the things we're going to go over in this season. We're going to look at healing childhood patterns that keep you chasing after love, like I was talking about that I was doing for so long. Releasing old heartbreak without losing hope are some of the techniques I've used for myself and my clients over the years to release heartbreak. And of course, we have to do one on stopping the self-sabotage spiral, breaking the cycle of anxiety in dating. We want to look at the worthiness wounds. Am I too much or not enough? We're going to definitely do an episode on that. And then specifically healing after divorce or long-term heartbreak and overcoming the scarcity trap in love. We're going to look at from rejection to resilience, because that's another huge transformation that you will make when you do this emotional healing, is becoming much more resilient. And grieving the fantasy man, healing through feminine energy. I know I have talked a lot about you don't want to fall into the trap of being in your divine feminine is the way to find love, because I have debunked that in several episodes. But we do need to look at your energy within yourself, your divine feminine and masculine energy within yourself, and healing those aspects. We will cover that. Moving forward, building emotional resilience in love. Those are some of the topics we're going to dive into. If you have any ideas, you can definitely email me at info@trulyeleanor.com and let me know some of the themes that you would love covered in season 4. And until next time, remember, love is closer than you think. Bye for now.